Hi everyone. So here's my peeps. On my dad's side, all of my great great grandparents were either born and lived in Nebraska or were born in Germany and moved to Nebraska. And six of the eight were German, while the other two were, or of German descent, the other two were Danish. Then my great grandparents were all born and lived in Nebraska, either in Bradshaw or York, Nebraska, and were farmers there, just like their parents had been. And then my grandparents both grew up on a farm in either Bradshaw or York, Nebraska, and they each had one sibling. My grandmother and grandfather met at, they were the king and queen of the 4-H local fair, and then that's how they met. They both attended the University of Nebraska at Lincoln, and they each had one sibling, and my grandmother became a stay-at-home mom, and my grandfather joined the Navy and then became a pastor, and they lived throughout the Midwest, as he was a pastor and moved to different churches. Because of this, my dad grew up, they didn't have great need, grew up a little bit poorer than my mom did. Things were a little bit tighter on a pastor's salary. So my dad attended college through receiving a full ride scholarship, and both of his brothers were able to attend college as well. My dad was born in 1969 in San Diego, California, because his father was stationed there. And my dad attended Wheaton College and then the Medical College of Wisconsin, and joined the Air Force, which helped pay for medical school. So he was stationed he did residency in Michigan, then was stationed in New Mexico, and then Iceland, and then Florida. So my family and I moved to all of those places. And then my parents eventually split while we lived in Florida. My dad moved to Ohio to do residency to become a radiologist, and now he's the chief medical officer at a base in Warner Robins. And then, so both my dad and mom are remarried. So I have two full sisters, one half sister who's significantly younger, and then four step siblings. And starting from my grandparents on, all of my aunts and uncles' parents are all college educated, and was fortunate and privileged enough to be able to attend college as well, and now in graduate school. And both of my full sisters are also in college, because they're of that age. And I was born in 1993 in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Then on my mom's side, we're very British, so my maternal grandmother was from England. So my great grandparents on that side were all born in England, and lived there as well. And on both sides have sirs, and so on one side the great grandfathers here, one of them was the first governor of the Imperial Bank of India, and that's how he made his money. And so my great grandmother married my great grandfather, who came from a family with an older title, so that was an advantageous marriage for both of them, because she got to marry into the title of the older family, while he got to marry in the money, because his father had been the second son, Sir Eustace, and so he didn't inherit the land or as much money, which is why he went into the military and was the private secretary to Winston Churchill before he was prime minister, and ended up as governor of the Seychelles Islands. And then my grandmother, her father died during World War II from wounds he acquired during the war. She was born in England, but her and her mother and her three siblings left England during World War II to live in South Africa to be safer. And then my grandmother did not want to go to finishing school, as many British women were to do. And because her father had passed away, she had a little bit more freedom and decided to go to medical school in Ireland. So she did a joint undergraduate medical school program and completed all of her college career in 6 years, and then went to South Africa as a missionary doctor. And my grandfather had completed medical school as well, and was in South Africa too, and that's where they both met. And on my grandfather's side, his great-grandfather, John Budge, came from the Orkney Islands in Scotland in 1869 and was part of the fur trade. He lived in Chicago and then North Dakota and Canada, and that's where he met his wife. Annie Cox was in Canada, and then they moved back to the Minnesota area, and that's where Lois was born, and she was the youngest of 12 children. So there's definitely more kids and siblings on my mom's side of the family, and her parents were farmers as well, so that's in a lot of my heritage. And she married Milton Brown in 1925, and she had been a nurse and he was a doctor, and they had to date secretly because that wasn't allowed. We don't know anything about his side because he was an alcoholic and stole drugs and had been lost his license, so my grandfather never knew him that well. And my grandfather was born in St. Paul as well and had three siblings and attended medical school. And then went to South Africa where we met my grandmother. And my mom is divorced and she is remarried as well, and she's an art teacher. And it's funny because all of her siblings and parents are in the medical field, but then I'm following her into education. And she was born in 1969 in Zululand, South Africa during one of their missionary stays. And then, yep, back down to me. So, thanks, y'all.